Hi, everyone. Welcome to Really, Really Badly. This is episode 11, I believe. Wow, we're in the double digits
Double
now. That's
digits?
fantastic. Yes, we made it. Today we're talking about goals. 2 weeks ago we talked about motivations, but today we're talking about goals, how to actually get to those motivations, and maybe the different steps we can take on our ways to our dreams. Yeah, we're just going to be talking about what goals are, defining them, and maybe the different levels of them, and how to best utilize them to create the life that you want. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, and as always, we appreciate any kind of feedback. We've gotten a couple good feedback from our friends, people who are close to us, and it's definitely valuable to us. There are some things that we either don't notice or that we can do in like the post-processing to make things better, make it a better experience for you guys. So please let us know about that. You can reach us, obviously, any of the comments on the posts on our website, reallyreallybadly.com, YouTube comments. You can email us, reallybadlypodcast@gmail.com. And we appreciate a rating, feedback on the app that you listen to. That would really help just spread the word about the podcast. So thanks for joining. Let's get it going.
Let's get it going. So goals today. I think it was originally my idea to talk about goals. Hey.
Yeah, I think so. And I know I was excited to talk about goals with you because if you were to ask me like who in your life is best at goals, I'd be like Brandon.
Sweet.
And I suck at goals.
It's a very specific question too. Someone asked you that. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, Travis, and I don't think that you're bad at goals at all, and I'll tell you why later in the episode.
Okay.
But yeah, goals have always been a very important thing to me, and I'm excited to talk about them today. So I guess my first experience with goals, or kind of where I think why it's such a big theme in my life, it started when my mom would make these lists for me and my brother when we were kids.
Okay.
And so instead of having just the regular weekly chores, where it was, oh, we have to empty the dishwasher every other day or something like that, it took a form of like this list that we had to do. And it was probably 6 to 7 things. And she would put deadlines on them. It wouldn't just be the week. It would be, someone's visiting in a few days. So all these things need to be done.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And me and my brother obviously hated these things. Just absolutely hated them.
Well, why? Why would you hate that as a child?
I know. Well, something about being able to go out and play as opposed to doing this boring list, Yeah, and I remember a few times me and Boomer would talk about the lists, and we both agree that not only would we never do these lists when we were grown up, but we would never subject our poor kids to doing these lists. Like, this is just, it's the worst. It's child abuse. We hated them.
Right. Good luck. I can almost guarantee you that's gonna be like the exact thing both of you do to your kids. That'll be like the one thing that you realize when you're like 35. You're like, I've turned into my parents.
Yeah. Well, I honestly feel like I already have, because a decade and a half later, at 25, I can't get through my week without a list.
Yeah.
I have a notebook, and I just have one. I go through probably one every 4 months or so. And
Wow.
These notebooks are just made of lists of tasks and things like that. And I wish I had mine here to show you, but I forgot it at work, which is terrible because it's like you forget your brain and you have no idea. Yeah, last night was so useless. I didn't know what I should be doing.
That's funny.
So I guess that I didn't really recognize them as goals until very recently, as that was kind of an early way of teaching me and my brother how to set goals and how to, just achieve them one by one. And I'm sure everyone, or many people out there, have to-do lists. It's not really a revolutionary thing, I'm sure, for most people to hear that. But yeah, the to-do list and things like that is kind of a smaller form of setting goals for yourself.
Nice.
Uh, yeah.
So
So,
how? Because here's my like I said, I think I'm bad at goals for a few reasons, and one of the things that's hard for me is like maybe distinguishing
mhm,
between like a habit or a schedule and goals, because I feel like I'm I wouldn't even say I'm okay at this either, but maybe I at least try more for like habit and structure schedule in my life. But like, would you distinguish that from goals, and if so, kind of like what is that? Because they're closely tied, I imagine. But what would
mhm.
you, I don't know, say about that?
Yeah. Well, and maybe I should have led off with that. I think that yeah, it is important to define what a goal is because, like you said, some things like chores aren't necessarily goals. They're just these things you have to do every week.
Right.
So maybe, yeah, to distinguish, let's spend some time on that. Just the definition of a goal is an object of a person's ambition or effort. It's an aim or a desired result.
Okay.
So in that case,
Yeah, I found a definition too. Do you mind if I read that out?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
please.
So I have an observable and measurable end result, having one or more objectives to be achieved within a more or less fixed time frame.
Hmm.
I thought that was pretty specific and pretty good.
Yeah, that's very good. That's very good. Um, I have, yeah, I have kind of a further definition of it. It says setting goals gives you a long-term vision and a short-term motivation,
Hmm.
which I think is a nice argument for how to set up a goal, or why to set up a goal. Um, so the daily sort of the daily things like chores, things like that, and habits maybe too. Maybe those aren't necessarily goals because they're just these things that we do.
Okay.
You know, they're not specific things that we want to achieve. The way that I look at goals is, yeah, a long-term result, like I said, an ambition or something like that, like a desired result.
Okay.
And so being able to kind of look into the future and say, I'm here, but I want to be there, or I want that thing. And yeah, and so that's kind of how I look at a goal, right? The I also think that it's important to distinguish the different levels of goals.
Okay.
So kind of a large ambition, a thing that you want to obtain. It's a larger goal, you know. It might take several years, it might be several decades. And that's a good goal to have. But in order to achieve something big like that, which you could even call it a dream, in order to achieve a dream, you're going to need smaller, more pared down goals to get there, which I'm sure is basic knowledge, you know.
Right.
Yeah, but learning how to set these goals and be able to see the through line of this is a smaller goal, but it's eventually going to get me to that larger one is, I think, where people can, yeah, where people can stand to improve.
Okay.
If
Nice.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just kind of rambling. It's such a
No,
big
no,
topic,
no.
you
This
know.
is good. Well, and for me, what I end up asking, because again, I have trouble like making goals in my life. I don't really know if I've had like goals. There's things I want to do, but like I think I have a hard time with that, like breaking down. But you kind of touched on this a little bit. A little bit. You said why you think it's important to have goals, and so I mean, just kind of is just really basic. Like, why do you think we should, or why do you think it's important to have goals?
Hmm. I think it's important to have goals because goals can bring a specificity to your life.
Okay.
Where I think a lot of us have these big dreams and ambitions and things that we really, really want. Uh, and those things are fantastic. It's not, it's good to want these things, but they're so nebulous and so they seem kind of unattainable and so kind of generic, you know, where we spend so much time focusing on that dream and how great it would be to have that dream or cross that finish line. We don't actually spend our valuable time focused on how we can get there.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally.
So I think it's a much better use of time to carefully plan and to set these attainable things, these things that are specific and within reach, you know, that they are attainable.
Right.
I think it's a much better use of people's time to hack away at those smaller things on their way to the big thing than to spend so much time focused on this big thing that they want.
Okay. Gotcha.
It's kind of my philosophy.
Yeah. And that goes along with a lot of, what I think a lot of people probably have read or thought about with the subject.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an example of a goal you'd be willing to share, either that you are working towards or that you have accomplished in the past, that you had to like just do this with, like break down smaller, and how you did that?
Yeah, I mean, I always go back to fitness with things like this.
Yeah.
Fitness is such a perfect perfect model for goal setting, for long-term achievement, for just discipline and action in general. It's just such a perfect way to measure it all. So that a half marathon that I decided I wanted to run, I have this kind of list of long-term fitness goals that I've been keeping. And one of them was, run a half marathon.
Okay.
So that's kind of, so that's a big goal, obviously. I've never run a long distance in my life at this point. Never run a 5K or anything like that. But I still wanted to do it. So figuring out, okay, what's the first thing that I need to do? And being able to run the 5K, then being able to run the 10K, then being able to run 15, things like that. Figuring out the diet, the running habits, the plan, even the running plan. It's all very broken down, which I like. So I guess, that's kind of a more straightforward one, right? Where it's just a matter of distance and working your way up to a certain distance. Other goals that maybe are a bit more, a bit less obvious, things like personality traits, habits that maybe you'd want to change, ways you'd like to treat people better. I remember, I think it was last year, I started realizing that I would often tell people what they wanted to hear more than what I actually thought. I was starting to recognize this pattern in my life. And so I decided that 2017 was going to be the year of telling people what I think, like actually not being afraid to just tell it like it is. And that's a big goal, it's kind of a personal goal, but it took little forms of, the first step for me was figuring out what I actually thought about things, was to actually formulate an opinion about a subject.
Okay.
And then, so, that's a little goal I could figure out. I could actually write down, okay, this is what I think about this. And then being able to say, okay, next time I'm asked, I'm going to say what I think, So so my point is you can apply this idea of goal setting to a lot of different things. And it can bring a specificity to your life, and it can also bring a simplicity to your life, because we talk about taking action in situations instead of just being so overwhelmed by what we're trying to obtain and things like that. And I think goals can really help you do that. Yeah, no,
for sure. One of the things I read this in one of the articles I was kind of looking through, and I really liked the the way that this was worded, because I think it goes so well with last week's episode, the ethos of what we're trying to do here. But they said goals promote self-mastery. And I kind of like that term. It was an interesting term, like self-mastery, like, like discipline, responsibility, taking a charge of your life, which I think goes really well with just everything we want to do, and obviously why we're talking about this, because I think even though I feel like my experience with goals, our knowledge of goals is kind of shaky at best, that it's something I can see as valuable and something that I want to implement in my own life for this reason of, focus, direction, having like a roadmap for how I'm going to get to where I want to go, having just thinking about where do I want to go. Cause I think a lot of people don't do that. And so I think, again, this is why we're talking about this. This is why this fits in with really, really badly. And kind of going off of that, I hope this isn't too much of a rabbit trail. But I was reading this article, and this is really interesting. They basically made a study about goals, they conducted it on a population of students enrolled in a Harvard MBA program. This is back in 1979. And take this with a grain of salt. Like, this is just some random website. I found it on Net Positive Changes Coaching. Never heard of it before or anything like that. So take it with a grain of salt, but I found this to be pretty interesting, and they've seemed to have referenced it pretty well. But they took a survey of these students before, like at the beginning of the this MBA program, and they were asked, have you set clear written goals for your future and made plans to accomplish them? So 3% of the graduates had written goals and plans, 13% had goals, but the goals were not in writing, and then 84% had no specific goals at all.
Wow.
So then they came back to these same students 10 years later, and the results were that 13% of the class who had goals, or like the 13 that had goals but weren't in writing, they had an average earnings of nearly twice as much as the 84% who had no goals at all. And then that 3% that had the goals that were clear and written down were earning on average 10 times as much as the other 97% put together. So the 13% who had goals but weren't written down, and the 84%. Now, again, with a grain of salt, like, this is an MBA program, so it's maybe a relatively small group of people, and they're just talking about money. So, obviously money is not the most important thing to many people, and to have a successful, rich, fulfilling life, but you can see the power of the way of setting goals. So even if your goals aren't monetary, like, you may, your chances of success, prosperity, stuff like that is really important, which again is just kind of the thing that we want to bring to like our generations following us, is this idea of taking control of your life and having prosperity, self-mastery, self-control, discipline, all that kind of stuff that we've talked about. So I just thought that was interesting and really fits well into what we were doing. Which brings me to my question, though, which is barriers to goals. Because, like I said, I feel like every time I think about a goal, like a big lofty like dream, like you're talking about, I just get like locked up and don't get to the point of kind of breaking it down and being like, here are my daily, weekly, monthly steps to hit. And for me, the biggest reason is fear of failure. I think there could be more, but like in my head, I go, man, like if I have this goal, like, so I mean, here's like a dream of mine, I guess, would be, to be able to not have to rely on anyone else for my income, like work for myself type of a thing. Like, I would love to just write either like this take off, the website take off, like something where like I am working for myself, whether it's owning an own business or whatever. And the reason I want to do that is so that I can have the time that I need or want to spend with my future family. Like, I would love to be able to go to like every single extracurricular activity. I would love to, be able to like teach my kids, be with my kids, all that kind of stuff. However, like that's a pretty like in my mind anyway, that's a very like whoa, like that sounds like the perfect type of thing. And when I start thinking about it, I get scared of like if I go for this and don't do it, then I'm gonna like feel like a failure. And I feel like identity or like achievement and failure is so tied to many people's identities, like core of who they are, that can be very it just can lock you up. And so, what are there any other common barriers, or are there any barriers that you've seen in your life to goals? And how have you kind of, how do you even approach those barriers in the first place, I guess?
That's a great question. And I think you're right. It's mostly the fear of failure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was just gonna say, and it made me think of this quote from, and this is a Star Wars quote, so, but it's in The Empire Strikes Back when Yoda is talking to Luke, and he says, "Try not, do or do not. There is no try." And like for me, it's like, oh, that sounds great. Like, go for it, do it. But then at the same time, like I'm just like I would just rather not try then. Like I would just like I would rather not try to lift the X-wing and it fall back into the swamp than like. Yeah, I would just rather be like,
then
okay,
have tried
like,
and make a fool of yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'll go do something that I know I can achieve, or that's a much safer.
Yeah, and I struggle with that too. I really do. Wondering, could I be a success in this area? It might be good, but I don't even want to try because I might just be embarrassed or whatever. So I think everyone to a degree will struggle with that at some point in their life. And I think that what makes a good goal is something, well, I actually looked up what a good goal is. And they say that it's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timed.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm kind of going on a rabbit trail, but I'll try to bring it back.
Is good.
And the relevant part I really like, because we talked 2 weeks ago about how we can be disciplined and we can form these great habits, but if it's not in tune with our motivations, if it's not in tune with who we are and what we want in life long term, then it's just discipline for discipline's sake. It's not. It should be focused. It should be relevant. And I think that for goals, it's the same sort of thing. I think that it sounds like your goal, for instance, is something that's very personal to who you are. It makes sense, and it's something that you'll want no matter what happens in the next few years. I'd imagine that goal will still kind of stay in place, or, you know.
No, for sure.
Yeah. So I guess the first thing I would say is make sure that your goal is relevant, that it's actually that who you are is tied up in it. It's in tune, that idea of being in tune. And yeah, those barriers are definitely there. I'd say that
Well, for like the 3 people who give us views on YouTube, we are so sorry.
I apologize to our 5 viewers.
Everyone else listening is going to be like, what's going on? We're not even going to explain that one. If you want,
explain it. You can explain it.
Yep, you can go to the YouTube link and find that one out for yourself. Anyhow.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, what was I talking about?
You were talking. I have no idea.
Just blinded by.
Yeah, it's just like a giant magic eraser just wiped across my forehead there.
Oh,
well, we're talking about barriers and working past barriers, and I think it's hard because I think probably everyone's going to have a different type of barrier, also depending on your goal, depending on what it is, depending how long term it is, depending if you need what resources you need to get started with the goal or whatever. There's going to be a lot there. and I guess what I would say is this, part of this ties back well into the episode 2 episodes ago about motivation, about just doing it, starting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think,
Mm-hmm.
because something else I read, right, someone had as their list in the goals, like the secret to achieving your goal is to get started. And I was like, oh, okay, well, like, again, it goes right back to what we were talking about. And another thing that was interesting is someone mentioned if there are attitudes or habits that hold you back from accomplishing your goal. So kind of like what I was saying with, like, the fear or whatever. And they
Mm-hmm.
suggested, maybe like tackle those either in lieu with your goal, or like before you even try, like, okay, doing that dream goal, like, okay, what are the habits or like attitudes that I have that keep me from accomplishing a goal? So let's make a smaller goal to take care of those things. So what can
Yeah.
I do in my life that will address these attitudes or habits, get those taken
Mm-hmm.
care of now? And that's, and again, this is just, I guess this is maybe what that breaking down into these smaller pieces is. And then,
Yeah.
and then
Well, and
just,
sorry, just to one quick thing, and I think the idea of addressing is fantastic, and like the fact that you've already like said to yourself is that what's keeping me from, maybe taking the next step? Well, it's fear of failure. Like I think even just naming that is a
right.
step in its own right. So yeah.
Okay. No, I like that. Which I guess is a more just bigger whole picture view of all of it. Realizing that
Hmm.
we, when we're trying to accomplish these goals, like, we are imperfect humans who have all kinds of, everything in our life is intertwined and tied together, and so you're not a machine that can just immediately start on some of this stuff, right?
Hmm.
Um, but and yeah, and then we talked about kind of the tie of goals and habits, because I think their habits are how you accomplish your goals, but your habits are not necessarily the goal
Hmm.
itself. So to realize that if you have a goal without your habits, they're useless, right? Because then that's where you just say it's just a dream, like it's just something I think about and that I wish for. But if I don't have habits in my life that are taking me there, it's useless, right? All I'm doing is just kind
Hmm.
of having existential crises for no reason.
Yeah.
Um, if it's that type of a goal.
Yeah.
So,
And to kind of go back a bit, you one reason I think that you're better at goals than you think is that you say that it's a goal of yours uh to not have to work for anyone else, to create your own business or to um run something online or something like that. A lot of what you do is moving towards that. Spending time on this podcast, doing lots of research, listening to podcasts, things like that. I'd argue that those are steps.
hmm.
Those are all moving you closer to your goal. And I think, and that's kind of one of the things that I wanted to touch on today is that goals don't always have to be so um, measured and calculated, and
Hmm.
they don't always have to be these huge steps, these huge leaps. Like they can be just a matter of spending lots of time learning about something, or a good amount of my week is spent doing this one task that's eventually leading me closer to this big goal. And I think being able to find those little things and those little ways that are they're all like adding up and helping you focus your life just a little bit more towards your goal,
Hmm.
and spinning it in the direction that you want it to turn. I don't think people realize how simple those things can be. Just reading a book on a subject, or visualizing constantly what you want your life to look like in a year or something like that, or talking to a therapist about certain hangups you have, or barriers that you're facing, mentally. I think that all of those can add up and point us towards our goals. It's just a matter of being able to name those things and being able to recognize them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that does. That's good. Someone said this. I mean, for what this is worth, I guess something I read. Someone in one of the articles said to create a mantra for your goals. Oh, this I thought, okay, I can tie this in. I got this. Okay, so first off, I read this, which I thought was really good. But they said goals cannot contradict each other. So if you have a set of goals, right? If you've got multiple goals, the thing about goals is that they can't contradict each other. You can't say I want to save X amount of dollars, but I'm also going to spend, if your other goal is to spend X amount of dollars, but if
Right.
that amount is contradicting each other, basically, like you can't have these like simultaneous contradictory goals. You can do multiple things at a time, but I don't know, you get what I'm saying, right? Your
Yeah,
goals can't
totally.
directly contradict each other, which gave me this thought of like the goals in your life, kind of the direction, right? Because we're talking about like direction, right? You can only go one direction, or like we talked
Hmm.
about a few episodes ago, if you're trying to go 1,000 different directions, if you're trying to go a centimeter in 1,000 different ways, you're not going to go anywhere.
Right.
Whereas if you can focus and go in one direction, you're going to make a lot more progress. And so it gave me this thought of like, if goals can't contradict each other, then that means that goals have to be synergistic and create synergy with each other, which can be a really powerful thing. Synergy is an idea that I love a lot, as a business term, and as a term of, just getting things done between people, friends, businesses, whatever. I think it can be a really, really powerful thing, right? The idea that 1+1=3, not 2. And so, anyway,
Mm.
with that thought, I had read something else that someone said create a mantra for your goals, kind of like
Hmm.
a rallying cry that you can use when you're trying to accomplish your goals. And I like, just 2 to 5 words, kind of like a phrase. This person was writing,
Mm.
it was this idea came from some business talker guy who said basically that he thinks businesses should abandon the like mission statement, because they're basically useless. They're just things that they say that they never do anything with, and it's just kind of this,
Mm.
ooh, sounds nice for our corporate brand, but they don't actually do anything with it. He says instead people should create like a mantra, like 2 to 5 words that you can say that relate to what you're doing overall. And I think that is something that you can tie into if your goals are synergistic, they can't contradict each other. If you can develop some kind of like a mantra rallying cry for your goals, I think that could be something that's helpful to give direction. If you're thinking of, because again, a lot of people I think just haven't even sat down and thought about their goals. And so they just
Hmm.
come up with, oh, my goal is to make more money in a couple years. It's just like everyone kind of has like just these same general
Right.
goals. But if you're trying to come up with goals that are specific to your own life, make them synergistic, create some kind of mantra that's going to give you direction when you're thinking of these goals and trying to come up with things in your own life. And I like
Hmm.
that. I liked reading that. It was kind of interesting because it got me thinking about what it is that I value, and kind of where I want to go with things. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I guess the I'll just read that list again of what makes a good goal and just break it down, just because I think it's a great like resource for people.
Yeah.
You want to find a goal that's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timed. And if
Yeah.
you have any thoughts on these, feel free to jump in. Specific, you want specificity. You need, if your goal is, oh, I want to be stronger, and then you hit the gym, it's like, well, I guess I'll lift weights. I guess I won't run, or something like that.
Yeah.
But if it's no, I want to be able to bench press double my body weight. That's a very specific goal, and your workouts will reflect that. So you want to be specific, measurable. Again, this is why I love fitness goals, is because they're just so they fit so perfectly. You know, Measurable. Yeah, you want to be able to see the progress bar, if you will.
Yeah.
If it's just this kind of unattainable thing, like I said, I want to get stronger or I want to be funnier. Uh, Not really measurable. Um, Attainable. Make sure it's something you can attain. Um, yeah, I will never be a concert pianist. Just it's not attainable for me, you know. Uh, It's kind of a no-brainer. Relevant, like we said, in tune with who you are, with your
Hmm.
motivations, with what's important to you, and timed. Um, Sometimes you can even impose a deadline on yourself. I We're kind of used to this idea of deadlines in school, but when we get out of school, no one's going to impose a deadline on you
Right.
to get this thing done. I mean, you might get fined if you don't finish your taxes on time or things like that.
Right.
But we don't really experience deadlines on a day-to-day basis. But you yourself can impose a deadline. Um, my my One of my professors at theater school, she used to say, if you want to write a show, if you want to write a play, book a venue.
Oh, nice.
Which I think is fantastic because it's like,
Yeah. Well,
you know, if it's January and you book a venue in September, the show will get written. It might not be as perfect as you pictured it, but it will get written, you know?
yeah. No, I really like that one. And if no one's if this is new to anyone, which I figure most people heard, but these are, if you haven't caught it, SMART, SMART, SMART goals is what they call it. And the thing I like about the time one is, and again, this is what I'm really bad at, but like that, if you do have a time with it, that will then help you learn or know or figure out or decide how you're going to start breaking it down into those smaller goals that we talk about. But what I like what you just said there is like, if you want to write a play, book a venue. Something I wrote down is like, if you have a goal, maybe if it's something that you can invest in, uh, to kind of motivate you. So, for instance, like I I want to do this workout. It's a 4 days a week for 12 weeks workout routine. It's nice because it's one of those goals like where like everything's told for me, so it's already broken down day by day. Here's my days I work out. Here's my days I rest. Nice and neat. That's what I like.
Yeah,
It's nice.
good.
Um, but I've been using the gym at work. But sometimes after work, I'm like, oh, I'm tired. Today was a busy day. Like, I'm not gonna work out. I joined the local rec center, so I'm literally spending money every month. Like this money is spent, and it's kind of like this motivation of like, I mean, yesterday I woke up and I was sore from the day before. I was freaking tired. I was like, I do not want to go today. Maybe I'll just do it tomorrow and switch my rest day with my other day. But then I was like, you know what? Like, no, like you're paying money for this. Like, get up. It takes an hour. Go do it. And like, I found that to be really powerful. I was like, wow, I've never joined a gym before. I've never done that before in my life, so this is the first time, and I found that to be, I mean, I'm only like the first like week or so in, but like it's been kind of helpful. So if you can find a way to maybe like invest or like make a commitment that you can't take back necessarily, that like
Mhm.
will help you achieve it, just like you're saying, like book a venue. Once that venue's booked, shoot, like I like that's done. Like I can't go back from that. Like how now, what do I need to do to get there? So I really like that idea.
Totally.
I think that one's key to a lot of things, because I mean, you'll just kind of just endless, you can just end, I mean, you can just endlessly do things that kind of sort of get you there. But if I think time can be a big one, which I hate
Mhm.
that, but it's kind of just a fact. So
Yeah.
um and then the only other thing kind of like that I read that I thought might be interesting is for, because I know a lot of people might say, okay, well that's great, like I get it, goals, but like if I don't have goals or I don't know what my goals should be, or where do I start with goals, which is I think what I have a lot of trouble with. So I'm definitely going to do this, but I read in two places they gave like a list of like 7 different areas of your life that you can create goals in that help kind of give you a balance. So the first
Hmm.
one worded it as a spiritual, physical, financial, relational, social, professional, and mental.
Mm.
And then the other one said they broke it down as like family and home, financial and career, spiritual and ethical, physical and health, social and cultural, mental and educational. And so if that's kind of something that might help people to just kind of, all right, where do I start with this? Like here's like some areas to think about that you might want some goals in.
That's great. That's fantastic.
So, and we'll put that list up on the link. Uh,
Yeah,
so
great. That's awesome. One other thing I wanted to say
yeah.
about the idea of self-mastery, you brought that up
Yeah,
earlier
yeah,
in this. Um, I really like that, and I've definitely
yeah.
seen that in my life because once you once you do set goals and achieve those goals, even if they're just small ones, suddenly these bigger things that you want to accomplish, or maybe these bad habits you feel you're never going to break, they suddenly don't feel so big and scary anymore.
Hmm.
And that's what, yeah, I think that's why goal setting is very important and very good, because you'll often I mean, we'll all come up against obstacles that feel insurmountable at
Right.
one point in our lives. And if we've had the experience of self mastery, self discipline, and achieving things that we didn't think we were possible of, or that we didn't think were possible, suddenly those things aren't going to seem so insurmountable, or yeah, or so big.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I think that's one of the ways that goal setting has really changed my life, is that when I, yeah, just what I said, when I do come up against something that's new and uncharted territory, it's like, well, I handled that other thing. I broke it down, I figured it out, I figured what was in my control, and I let go of what wasn't in my control. I can handle this too. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that people will really benefit
Yeah. I
from
like
goal
that.
setting for that
And
reason.
yeah, I agree. And I think, again, a lot of what, realizing that like a lot of what we're talking about, the subjects that we've been picking, they all are kind of meant to kind of tie in together. Because right, our life, like we said, is kind of, I don't want to like, I kind of hate the word like holistic, but like we're looking at things from a bigger picture, how they all tie into each other, and they all can work well with each other. Um, and I think I agree. Like self mastery can, yeah, make these insurmountable mountains seem like walkable hills. Um, and just having that, like, I don't know, direction focus, right? We talk about our generation kind of just being this like wandering, like wishy-washy, don't know what we want to do with our life. Like that's why we chose this topic, and that's why it's good. um I came across a really good quote by Zig Ziglar, who, if people haven't heard of him, just kind of go look up his work. He's a famous businessman who's just, he has got a lot of good quotes and a lot of good work, but he had this quote: if you aim at nothing, you will hit it every time. And I was like, oh man, that's like,
Shit.
that's good. Yeah, it's
Wow.
so good. Like, yep. I don't even think I need to say any more about that, because it's just great. So I really like that. The other thing this isn't so much related to goals, if you have anything else to say about goals. But this is just kind of in general with what we're doing here on the podcast. I'm reading Harry Potter. So I was using it as a stand. And I was reading yesterday, and there was this quote. It was so good. I wrote the page number down here. So this is, if is it okay to give spoilers on Harry Potter now? Is it far enough
Yeah.
gone that it's,
Yeah, sorry if you've
well, and
been
it's
waiting
not a
to
big.
read Harry Potter this far
Then you
after
need
it
to
was
go listen
released.
to 2 weeks ago episode and just do it, because Harry Potter is awesome. Um, this isn't really a spoiler, I guess, but this is in the Order of the Phoenix. So,
Third book.
yeah, no, the fifth book.
Oh, sorry.
Uh,
Yes.
and yeah, it's the giant fat one. And so, uh, this is where Harry and Cho kind of have their like little fling. Like this is right after she kissed him and stuff. And so he's like, so here that goes, he's kind of, he's basically asking himself all about these girls. Like, why was she crying? Is she angry? Blah, blah. He's trying to figure out girls' heads. And there's this line. He says, "That's what they should teach us here," he thought, turning over onto his side. "How girls' brains work. It'd be more useful than divination anyway." And I just like that quote, because I think there's been a couple times in my life that I've been like, why didn't I learn this in school? Why didn't I learn how to create a budget? Why didn't I learn, like, I don't know, so many things that like should be really simple. Like we learn about like all this kind of like big stuff that I'm not really going to do anything with. Like, why didn't I learn some of the things that I should have learned in school? And I read that this week and just thought I wanted to mention it on the podcast, of like, that's again, like with this whole ethos, like kind of where we want to go with this. Like that's kind of some of the stuff we want to be talking about. I mean, I talked about a lot of this goal stuff in my business classes, but like outside of my business classes, I don't think like I would have heard any of this stuff before. And so if there's other subjects, topics, or anything that you guys would like to know more about, or that you've wondered why you haven't ever heard about this in your life up till now, let us know, because we'd love to try to tackle that. And I'm sure there's things out there that I still have, would love to look into for myself, because I have not ever heard it from anyone. So, yeah.
Totally. Yeah. That's why I like talking with you, man.
Oh,
We always end up talking about these things that really matter. I like that.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's like so many topics to get to. Like like we said a couple weeks ago, one of our friends emailed us, and he had like a lot of good things to say about one of our episodes, and it like went way deeper than we went. And I was like, oh, I want to go back and talk about that. Like, and now I'm wanting to talk about like fear, because we touched on fear, and I want to talk. I mean, so we'll hopefully get to all of it over time. But yeah, if there's something specific that people kind of want us to go on, or if there's like a series someone wants us to do again, like we kind of did with the social media, like let us know. It would be great to hear from you guys. But other than that, I mean, that's kind of goals in a nutshell. This is good for me to hear, because I need to go kick myself in the butt a little bit and make some goals.
Yeah.
And if people have, if people want to share their goals with us, share their goals.
Yeah. What are your goals? What are you hoping to accomplish?
Yeah. And I would love to, I mean, seriously, like if someone needs someone to like follow up with them on goals, like hit us up, like let us know what's up. We would love to talk about it a little bit and see how the progress is going, like what you find to be effective and not effective. I don't know. I love that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
let us know.
And I just noticed, Travis, I think a few episodes ago, you were trying, you set a goal for yourself to read, and you were only partway through book 2. Is that correct?
Of Harry Potter? Yeah, I mean, this would have been like last summer, maybe.
No, really? I could have sworn that a few weeks ago you were only like through book 2 or something like that.
I've been on book 5 since my past job, which would have been before January.
Really? Oh, well, I was going to congratulate you on your goal of getting through several books. Now,
there was a time like where on my lunch period I would read in my old job. So I went through a few books pretty quick, but this one I've been on for a while, so I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Look,
I've been stuck on one too. So.
Yeah. Anybody should know not to assume that I read anything fast. It took me I'm no joke, like 5 years to read The Count of Monte Cristo, so people still give me crap about that. It's long, but it shouldn't have taken that long. And it's really good. If anyone's looking for a good book to read, The Count of Monte Cristo is fantastic. As a matter of fact, I think whose turn the last episode we didn't actually do this. We didn't do a thing that inspires. So I don't remember whose turn it is to go. So maybe we can both give something small, but like my thing would be to read that book. It is like, and don't if you've seen the movie's good, but the movie, there's a point like 20 minutes into the movie that like literally the storyline just like takes a 90-degree turn and just goes completely the other way. Not saying it's bad, but like I describe it this way. The movie is like the movie is like, I don't know, like a catchy song, whereas like the book is like an epic anthem. Like it's like just so much more and bigger. The movie's great, but like they really couldn't be more different as far as stories are concerned. Because if you were going to make the book into a movie and actually stick to it, it would be like 4 movies long, because it's pretty dense. But it's so good. I mean, it is so good. So people should. The friend who suggested it to me says it's the best book he's ever read. So take that for what it is. If you're looking for a good book, Count of Monte Cristo is fantastic. You can pick it up for like $2 because it's an old book. So
sweet. Yeah. I actually have a book recommendation as well, so we'll just do two books.
Sweet. I like that.
I'm reading a book called Reviving Ophelia, Saving the Selves of Adolescent Girls. And it's super, super interesting and really good. I'd recommend it to anyone. It talks about, it kind of highlights some of the difficulties that young girls go through, especially in our culture where everything's kind of over-sexualized. And I don't know, it really opened my eyes to quite a few things. And it's kind of, I think there's a book that's comparable called The War on Boys, which kind of shows from the boys, like young boys' perspectives and some of the difficulties that they will go through growing up in today's Western culture. But then Reviving Ophelia is another kind of from the girls' point of view.
Nice.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I'd recommend it.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for being here with us. Again, we appreciate if you give us some good feedback. If there's anything we can change to make this better for you guys, we
Hmm.
truly want this to be beneficial to people, and we truly want it to grow. So help us out with that. I'm excited that we are in the double digits. That's pretty cool. So
Yeah, it is cool.
we'll see you all next week.
All
Thanks.
right. See you later.